Shalom, family. I'm so glad you're here as we're going to get to this next story that I have on tap. So, before we get to that, the Juneteenth sale will begin on the 18th and it will end on Sunday, the 21st. And you'll get 45% off the entire store if you're on Etsy, Shopify, and TikTok Shop. So seize the opportunity and grab your hair products at a great discount. So we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Now, he's over in the G7 and he is ranting around the world leaders that his deal is better than Obama's with Iran. And actually, none of them agree with Donald Trump. They believe Obama's deal was better than what Donald Trump is presenting. There are some that are saying Donald Trump's deal is weak. So, yes, he's going on a rant over there. And even over here, there's a lot of people saying that the deal Donald Trump made is weaker. Now, one of the things Donald Trump did, he complained about the money that Obama gave the Iranians. He gave them $1.7 billion, and he complained about that money, saying it was too much money, and he don't agree that they should have got that money. And now Donald Trump is turning around and giving the Iranians $300 billion as part of the peace deal. You know who brought that out? Iran. Iran came online and told everybody in a social media post on X that part of the peace deal was the United States was going to give Iran $300 billion. Now, what's worse, $1.7 billion or $300 billion? I mean, the nerve of this narcissist and a hypocrite of a man sitting there complaining about what somebody else spent. And after Donald Trump's first term, he added $8 trillion to the deficit. That's how much he left out of his first term. $8 trillion. How the hell can you spend $8 trillion, man? What the hell? But that's what he spent in his first term. And I know he has surpassed that $8 trillion this time around. In fact, I think in his first year, he surpassed it. So, wow. Mm, mm, mm. So, y'all, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Please give me a one if you can see my screen. Yeah, well, these folks are terrible with money. There's no doubt about it. How are you in office and all these years these political offices have existed, right? How do you end up insolvent? But according to people like Donald Trump, everybody that looked like them got a high IQ. How the hell do you have a high IQ and your country is insolvent? Do you know how stupid you sound? You sound like a bunch of idiots. Everybody should laugh at you every time you open your mouth talking about a high IQ. People should laugh at your ass. So, anyway, y'all, thank you for the ones.
Breaking Iran war update. Vice President J.D. Vance confirms that Iran could get $300 billion in reparations if they do the right thing, according to Vance. So what has people very concerned is it looks like the United States has caved entirely. It looks like Iran has won this war. It looks like we have lost this war. We are giving unilateral concessions to Iran in order for them to open up the Strait of Hormuz. We're lifting some sanctions. We are lifting the barricade that we've got, the blockade of all of Iran's ports. And we're now talking about them getting possibly $24 billion in frozen U.S. assets and another $300 billion in reparations, all so that Iran goes back to where they were the day before the war started. We're not getting anything out of this, guys. They're claiming, the Trump people are claiming, well, there was a promise that Iran won't build nuclear weapons. Yeah, no S, Sherlock. Guess what? Iran made that promise 50 years ago.
Well, let's be real. The U.S. did lose the war. You lost the war. So, yeah, that's why you're paying concessions, because you lost the war. And y'all, that ain't even the only money that's going to be spent in that region. Donald Trump is asking for $1.5 trillion to rebuild the bases, the U.S. bases that have been destroyed. So you're talking $1.5 trillion, plus on top of that, $300 billion that will be given to Iran. And you want to know why the country is insolvent. But the U.S. did lose. That's why he's paying all this money out, because they did lose. Okay, this was no victory.
Obama had that promise in writing. That is not a new promise from Iran. They've lied the entire time. Donald Trump went in, killed 13 U.S. service members, spent over $100 billion of our money, blew up a whole bunch of our munitions and our planes and everything else, so that now we don't really have enough to fight a war with China or somebody else when we have to fight with. And we're finding that the big deal Trump got isn't even nuclear. The nuclear stuff isn't even resolved. That's for a later negotiation. This is simply to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which we had open anyway 3 months ago. And had Trump not invaded Iran, the Strait of Hormuz would have been open anyway. But now we had to make a ton of concessions to Iran. And by the way, it looks like Iran is going to continue controlling the Strait of Hormuz. This is an incredibly dangerous situation. We lost this war so badly at this point. And J.D. Vance today to come out and say, oh yeah, the $300 billion is on the table. Reparations. Why are we paying reparations to Iran? And he goes, well, it'll be Arab states that do it. Well, I don't care. You're bribing Iran with $300 billion because you could cajole the Arab states to do it instead of us. Same difference. It's a bribe. And the Trump people had said, oh, Obama gave money to Iran for their deal. We're never going to do it. The Trump people are giving like 10 to 50 times the amount of money to Iran that Obama did. No, guys, this is bad news. Trump promised us regime change. We don't have regime change. The same bad guys are in power. Trump promised us that he destroyed their military entirely. He didn't, especially going after their missile program. That was the big goal. He didn't. The missile program is still intact. And then he promised he was going to get rid of their nuclear program. He didn't. And it's not even part of the negotiation right now. It's not even part of this deal. All we did was get us back to where we were the day before the war when the Strait of Hormuz was open. But to get to where we were, and we could have been there just by not attacking Iran at all, we had to make massive concessions. We lost this war. More specifically, Donald Trump lost this war. Major embarrassment for America, incredibly dangerous for the Middle East, because Iran has now gone way up on the totem pole in terms of their relative power in the region.
Obama gave the Iranians $1.7 billion in exchange for the following. 1. Iran gave up 98% of their highly enriched uranium. 2. Iran agreed to have 2/3 of their centrifuges under international supervision. 3. Iran allowed their heavy underwater reactor to be filled with concrete so that they didn't have a mechanism to produce the uranium, which would then allow them to make a nuclear weapon. 4, they agreed to allow the IAEA to have 24/7 inspections anytime they requested, anytime they wanted. In addition to that, the strait was never closed, the oil was consistently flowing, and economies were not disrupted the way that they are now. In 2018, Donald Trump ended that deal with Iran, which set them on the path of developing a nuclear weapon again if they wanted to. In 2025, Donald Trump ordered Operation Midnight Hammer, which was a surprise attack on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities. According to U.S. intelligence and the IAEA, Iran's nuclear facilities suffered significant damage. February 28th, 2026, Donald Trump started a war with Iran. June 14th, 2026, Donald Trump agreed to give Iran $300 billion for the following. I'm Ashley with an eye, bringing you news on days that end in Y. Thank you for watching.
So I'm reading today that in the U.S.-Iran proposed peace deal that is supposedly going to be signed later this week. This is after we've been told at least 38 to 40 times that there's going to be a peace deal, but supposedly there's one. There is an agreement that there will be $300 billion be given to Iran for reconstruction and investments for Iran. Now, I'm assuming this comes from the American taxpayer, and I want to tell you that's a bunch of bullshit. This is a war that Americans did not support. As a matter of fact, we said no more foreign wars, and that's what we voted for in 2024. Well, Trump decided to bomb Iran and go to war against Iran on behalf of his good friend, Bibi Netanyahu in Israel, and he's on record saying that he did this for Israel, while he claimed that it was to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon. By the way, former DNI Tulsi Gabbard told Congress that Iran was nowhere close to having a nuclear weapon, and so did other nuclear regulatory agencies, said Iran was nowhere close to having a nuclear weapon, but Trump went ahead and bombed them anyway. Well, this cost Americans approximately $2 billion a day and depleted much of our weapons and ammunitions that we need for our country's defense. But let's add on to that. What else did it do? You know what it did? It drove the cost of gasoline that hurt the average American citizen, drove it to over $4.50 a gallon, drove diesel up close to $6 a gallon, and much higher prices if you live in states like California. So not only have Americans already paid the price at the pump, also including inflation went up. We've been paying $2 billion a day for Trump's war in Iran and Israel's war in Iran. And now we're getting told that we may have to pay an additional $300 billion to rebuild what Trump and Netanyahu decided to bomb. This is a bunch of bullshit.
Walk through some of this. The Iranians are saying that they're going to have access to a $300 billion reconstruction fund. True or false?
Well, Ed, that's the sort of thing they could have access to, funded by the Gulf Coast Coalition, so long as they honor their end of the obligation. I think that one of the things you're going to see, Ed, and people have to be skeptical of this, is that the hardliners in the Iranian system will overemphasize the benefits that Iran gets while underemphasizing all the things that they have to concede and all the things they have to provide in order to get these benefits. So we absolutely are open to the Gulf Coast countries investing in the reconstruction of Iran, but only if Iran ends their nuclear program, ends their enriched stockpile of material, and is really open to an inspections and enforcement regime that gives the American people confidence they're never going to have a nuclear weapon. So I think the dance you're going to see, Ed, which is going to be interesting, is the Iranian media, especially the hardline media, they're going to talk a lot about what they get without talking about what they give. It's important for all of us to correct that record.
The document has leaked, folks. The Trump regime's memorandum of understanding with Iran is now public. Saudi Arabia's Al Arabia was the first to get their hands on it officially. They've leaked the 14 points of this memorandum of understanding. Indeed, it does involve an obligation by the United States to facilitate a $300 billion fund for private investments in Iran. I'll get into that more in this video. I want to share with you the terms of this memorandum of understanding. It's already been signed electronically by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance on behalf of the United States. It was signed simply by MB Ghalibaf, Iran's parliament leader, on behalf of Iran. I find it notable that it was signed by the president and the vice president when it came to the United States, but the parliament leader when it comes to Iran. MB Ghalibaf's a powerful person in Iran, but surprising that he's the only person who signed it. In any event, let's go through these terms of the Memorandum of Understanding. It's set to be signed in person in Switzerland on Friday. Let's take a look at what it says. Iran and the U.S. together. Point one, Iran and the U.S. together with their allies in the current war declare upon the signing of this Memorandum of Understanding an immediate and permanent end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, and commit that from now on they will refrain from the threat of use of force against each other. The final agreement will confirm the provisions of this article and remaining articles. So notable. Point one, Lebanon is mentioned in the very first point of this MOU. Point two, Iran and the U.S. commit to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity and to refrain from interfering in each other's internal affairs. Three, Iran and the U.S. commit to negotiate and reach a final agreement within a maximum period of 60 days, extendable by mutual consent. In other words, this is not an actual deal. This is a memorandum of understanding to negotiate a deal, although there are some terms that appear to be binding in this memorandum of understanding. And of course, it says it could be extended by mutual consent. So I think we can expect that when 60 days is about to expire, they're going to continue this throughout the Trump regimes and throughout Donald Trump's term, and then probably hand this off to the next president. That's my best guess. And then goes on to say, four, immediately upon the signing of this memorandum of understanding, the U.S. will lift the naval blockade and prevent any interference or obstruction against Iran and restore traffic within a maximum of 30 days to its full capacity. Ship traffic shall be proportional to the pre-war volume of traffic on the part of Iran. The U.S. also commits to withdraw its forces from the surrounding areas within 30 days after the final agreement. So a binding term on the U.S. right now is it will lift the naval blockade immediately. And we believe that has already taken place. And then restoring the normal traffic within the strait. That's within a 30-day period after the official signing on Friday. Point five, upon signing of this memorandum of understanding, Iran will immediately take steps to ensure that the movement of merchant ships from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa is resumed within 30 days to the pre-war volume, taking into account the need to remove technical obstacles and the neutralization of mines by Iran. In other words, the blockade is open. We get our ships out. Our control over the Strait of Hormuz is released in the sense that the ships can leave, but let's keep on reading what else is in this. The U.S. commits together with its regional partners to create a comprehensive plan agreed upon by both parties for the rehabilitation and economic development of Iran, while ensuring financing of at least $300 billion. The implementation mechanism of this plan as part of the final agreement will be formulated within 60 days. 7. The U.S. commits to ending on a schedule to be agreed upon as part of the final agreement all types of sanctions currently facing Iran, including resolution of the UN Security Council and the Board of Governors of the IAEA, and all unilateral sanctions, both primary and secondary. Any sanction ever against Iran from all bodies gets removed. A big win for Iran right there. And that happens upon the final agreement. 8. Iran reiterates that it will never produce nuclear weapons. Iran and the U.S. have agreed that the fate of enriched material and all other mutually agreed nuclear-related issues, including Iran's nuclear needs, will be adequately addressed in a final agreement. The final agreement will confirm the provisions of this article. And so Iran is saying, we're not going to build a nuclear weapon, but this also indicates that Iran is suggesting that it's still going to have low-grade nuclear material. It's just not going to make it weapons grade. That seems to be consistent with what we've heard Iran say and what we've heard the Trump regime deny, but we're seeing it here now in writing. Iran and the U.S. agree that pending a final agreement, they will maintain the status quo. Iran will maintain the status quo on its nuclear program, and the U.S. will not impose new sanctions on Iran or strengthen its forces in the region. The U.S. commits that immediately after the signing of this MOU and until the date of the lifting of the sanctions, the U.S. Treasury will issue waivers for exports of Iranian crude oil, petrochemical products, and their derivatives, and all related services, including banking, insurance, transportation, etc. 11. The U.S. commits that in light of the progress of negotiations,
because they so everybody is saying that Trump and the administration lost to Iran because they agreed to pay them $300 billion of taxpayer-funded money. Check this out.
The Iranians are saying that they're going to have access to a $300 billion reconstruction fund. True or false?
Well, and that's the sort of thing they could have access to, funded by the Gulf Coast Coalition, so long as they honor their end of the obligation. I think that one of the things you're going to see, Ed, and people have to be skeptical of this, is that the hardliners in the Iranian system will overemphasize the benefits that Iran gets while underemphasizing all the things that they have to concede and all the things they have to provide in order to get these benefits. So we absolutely are open to the Gulf Coast countries investing in the reconstruction of Iran, but only if Iran ends their nuclear program, ends their enriched stockpile of material, and is really open to an inspections and enforcement regime that gives the American people confidence they're never going to have a nuclear weapon.
So as we heard J.D. Vance say multiple times, the $300 billion will not come from taxpayers at all. Not one bit of that money comes from taxpayers. All of that money comes from the Gulf Coast Coalition. This is what J.D. Vance said multiple times. According to the Trump administration, the proposed $300 billion reconstruction fund for Iran is entirely funded by the Gulf Arab nations and private investments, meaning zero U.S. taxpayer dollars are slated to be used. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all those places are going to be the ones that fund the reconstruction of Iran. And even with that said, they are not going to do it unless Iran agrees to all the terms that the U.S. has stated. So if they're not following what Trump said, then they're not getting any of that reconstruction money. Not one bit of U.S. tax dollars will be used to fund Iran. You're going to hear that kind of misinformation from all the liberals, and you're going to hear it even from some of the Republicans and some Christian creators. I've seen it already. Don't listen to it. God bless.
All right, so according to a new memorandum of understanding signed by the United States and Iran to end the war, the United States will be lifting all sanctions and it will ensure a $300 billion investment fund to help with the reconstruction of Iran. Now, I want to stress there's been a lot of spin around this, and what we have today is based off of a leak from Josh Block at the Hudson Institute, a reliable source that says this is the actual text of the memorandum of understanding that the United States and Iran both have said that they signed a few days ago. So in terms of the sanctions, this is addressed in Articles 7 and 10 of the memorandum of understanding. They say the United States commits to ending on a schedule to be agreed upon all types of sanctions currently facing the Islamic Republic of Iran, including resolutions of the UN Security Council and the International Atomic Energy Agency, and all unilateral U.S. sanctions, both primary and secondary. In the meantime, the United States, upon the signing of this agreement, which has already been signed, the U.S. Treasury will issue waivers for the exports of Iranian crude oil, petrochemical products, and related services relating to banking, insurance, transportation, and the like. So sanctions are in the process of coming off, again, according to this leaked document. And in the meantime, the United States will issue waivers for all of the other sanctions until they are fully removed. The $300 billion one has been a topic of a lot of debate. Vice President Vance yesterday in the news seemed to confirm that this is a discussion. It's just a matter of when it comes about. So in the memorandum of understanding, Article 6 says, quote, the United States undertakes, together with its regional partners, to create a comprehensive plan for the rehabilitation and economic development of the Islamic Republic of Iran while ensuring the financing of at least $300 billion. I want to stress that does not say, and the MOU does not say that the United States will be giving U.S. money to Iran. It does not necessarily say that it's going to be the release of Iranian assets. It doesn't say that it's going to be a group project from all of our partners in the Middle East. It just says the number on that is $300 billion. So clearly a lot more information. That's not good. To stress, like, I don't think the Iranian regime right now should be on the receiving end of any money. But the source of that is not explicitly laid out in the MOU. But we'll keep running through this thing. It's not great.
$300 billion. That is what Iran is claiming the U.S. will give them in a, let's call it a reconstruction fund to rebuild Iran. Let's call it what it really is. Compensation. That's the word we're looking for. Compensation for the damages caused. Now, the U.S. claims, and this is important to say, that it's false news. President Trump flipped out when he was asked about this and said, absolutely not true. Well, let me tell you something. The reality is, in the last week or so, the most reliable information that has come out on the outline of the agreement has been from the Iranian news, believe it or not. We've had very little information from the U.S. government, very little information from the Israeli government, who's not really part of this. But the Iranian news is reporting officially, reporting more details, and they seem to be more accurate than what we're getting elsewhere. And they tell a story. The U.S. is going to release billions, possibly tens of billions of dollars sometime in the next 30 days if the agreement is signed or the memorandum is signed to allow, let's call it economic easing for the Iranians, and along with releasing the blockade, etc. It'll be a whole long series of slogans and things that help the Iranians. Let me tell you something. This is sort of expected. If we had the mindset or the expectation that Iran would give everything that the Americans are asking, or the US government is asking, and not get something in return, we were wrong. I mean, they're still standing. They're still fighting. They're still blocking the Strait of Hormuz months into this event. And believe it or not, that is a sign of strength and a sign of resilience. Now, on a military level, the U.S. won. There's no question here. When it comes to the asymmetrical nature of this war, to the terrorism element of it, Iran has done quite well. We need to be honest here. And this leaves a big question for me as an Israeli here, outside of Jerusalem, asking the question of, well, what about us? Do we get compensation? Who's going to pay for the damage the Iranian missiles caused in Israel? I mean, every missile strike causes damage in the
Well, why should they pay for anything? Y'all started the war. I mean, and every peace deal, it was really broken by Israel. So what do you expect to get? You took a chance on fighting a war and the results were not good. And as far as Donald Trump getting private funding, I never believed that. If you remember, the ballroom started out that way. It was from donations from wealthy people, right? And it all of a sudden turned into taxpayer money. So I do not believe nothing Donald Trump is saying about private funding or alternative funding. I don't believe him. At the end of the day, when they fork over that $300 billion, that is going to come from taxpayer money right here in the U.S. Every dime. Every dime. So, no, I mean, if you feel like you should get compensation, then it's up to Israel to work that out with Iran. Seriously. I don't know what y'all think anybody should do. Maybe you should think about these things before you start a war with someone. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. I have my next live coming up at 5:45, and we're going to talk about how a lot of people are raising the red flag because Donald Trump looks very sick over there at the G7. And some of the world leaders were saying things like they had to repeat the same thing to Donald Trump multiple times before he got it. you know? And when I saw pictures of him, especially when he was standing, it's very clear his cankles are still very swollen. And it even looks like he has put on weight. I don't know if he put weight on or that's just fluid from his heart. It could be. I'm not sure. But we will be talking about that at 5:45. So everybody, I will see you then. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support and have a wonderful afternoon. Shalom, family.